Now people, I know, you've been waiting patiently. A video's on the way.
He's in the building on the left! Lee's coming round your left! Lee's coming round your left! Oh, hey! What'll do? Oh my word!
Now I know, I've been away for quite some time. I could tell you that I'm a very busy person, and you know, I've been busy with work, trying to sell a house, and all that kind of other stuff, but really... So now a bit of the delay is that I've been waiting for some pretty good weather to try and do some filming for this video. And it was only a couple of days ago that this whole woods, all of this here, was sunny. It was baked in sunlight. And I was like, yes, I'm going to get the filming done. I'm going to get everything done. And I'm going to get you guys video. Because as you can see, it looks like the middle of Canada at the moment. In Wales, in the middle of April. Go figure. So this is going to be a kind of an all seasons type video of my first impressions of the Runcam scope cam and how it compares to my homemade version. So this is the Runcam scope cam. First impressions, look how small this little guy is. Look how small that is. It's just beautiful. Obviously, I've kind of rusted mine up a little bit to make it look all nice and rugged. And it'll go really nicely on my scope. To fit it on the scope, but you basically turn this sideways and then it basically loosens the Picatinny rail, and then you can just stick it on top of your scope, or you can stick it underneath your gun. There is two markings on here which I've stupidly painted over that you can rotate the lens. If you want to have it on the side of the gun, then you can, so you don't have to rotate your footage, but I've just got it set to standard like that. If you're coming from an airsoft point of view, I think this camera is absolutely perfect. This is the 35mm version, and I think it's absolutely bang on for the range that you're going to be reaching. For paintball, I think if you're using round ball, I think a 25mm version would be far better for you, because I'll show you some footage, because obviously that's what you're here for really, is to see what the footage looks like. Basically what it is that the camera is focused further past what a round ball would normally hit, so that's something to be mindful for with this. First strikes, however, it seems to be pretty on par at the maximum distance a first strike would get. So for long range engagement, I think this camera is brilliant. Now, when you compare it to my homemade one, this little guy here, this is a GoPro Hero 2. Look at that, little GoPro Hero 2. Now this, very old camera, but this basically, you know, it fits in here, and then I put the case on the back, and then the rail goes here. So what this basically is a standard GoPro Hero 2. So if you imagine this case, that's the Hero 2 case, and I've basically just glued an iPhone telescopic lens that I got off eBay onto this camera, and surprisingly it works. The only thing it doesn't do is record full screen. Now what that means is that the raw footage coming from the GoPro Hero 2 will have a circle like this all the way around. So if you're not targeted straight where that circle is, you're going to have a hard time tracking the balls of where they're impacting. Now with this Runcam, I have a bit of negative concerns, if you will. Number one being that, from the point of view of paintball only, because I mean the general gist of this camera feels like it would take a hit like a champ. But on the top, you will have three little, let's turn it on. You will have three little green lights like that. Now those little green lights are recessed into little holes. So obviously this is just a protective case. Now, I think if you got hit there, I think you're going to have paint penetrating. And also around the back, if you can see there, you've got a USB lead and a video out lead that's in there. And if you get paint in those, that's your camera done, I'm afraid. Now, one thing I have noticed with this camera, I've used it at a few events now. I didn't want to make a video about this until I've actually used it properly, but I'm having a few instances with this camera where the camera is actually turning itself off in the middle of the game for no reason whatsoever. I have a 32 gigabyte memory card in here. I also have this little guy, which is an external battery. You can see the little light, which I've also kind of rusted up. Now this little guy and this little guy both sit on top of my scope. So this has been powered via this. So I don't really rely on the internal battery in here, but I just don't understand why this seems to be turning itself off over and over again. It's not a big problem because you do hear it, but it is a problem. Now, I've started recording on 720p on this camera, and again, footage which I'll show you in a sec shows how lovely the 120 frames per second recording can be, especially when you slow it down. So I've rabbled on enough. You're not really here to listen to me talking, you're here to see the footage so you can decide whether you want to buy this camera or not. But we shall jump onto the computer now and I shall show you some of the footage, my concerns with the distances between what the footage can record, and if you've got any questions then leave them down below and we'll see what we can do to help you. Okay, so you'll recognize this clip from the beginning of the video where Rowan was playing the invincible zombie. Now, if you look very closely at the clip, you will see that Rowan is, of course, not in focus, and yet far behind him in the field, the whole tree line is in focus. Now, here we have John approaching me, probably about 15 feet away. Again, you can clearly see the trees behind John are pixel sharp, lovely, lovely and sharp. John, however, not in focus. Again, this would be rectified had I had a shorter lens. Okay, so now this one's a bit more interesting. This one was about 25 feet away, 25 to 30 feet away. This was when Rodri had no idea I was in the fort, and 2 shots to the side of the ribs is always a nice welcome back present from his hiatus away from the team. But again, you can see that the greeny leaves in the very far background are in focus, but the trees behind Rodri along with Rodri are not in focus. Okay, so we're getting into a bit of longer range right now. This is pretty much maxing out the distance of my TMC to about 40 feet, something like that. You can see that a lot more of the scene, including Lee, is a bit more in focus. And for round ball, if I don't have to arc my TMC too much, I can still keep the target in the frame to capture the hit. Now onto my homemade scope cam. This is also from a previous video with my 12 kill streaks at Task Force Paintball. Now this is with the Hero 2, and I think the Hero 2 has pros and cons. Its pros, it does keep a lot more of the scene in focus. It doesn't seem to focus at a specific distance, but what it does tend to struggle with is it finds it difficult to compensate for the light, which is why a lot of the scene is quite overexposed. Again here, when I'm taking Andy out with a headshot, most of the scene is in focus. Again, that overcompensation is just being a little bit of an issue. It could be the lighting on the day, but generally the Hero 2 does overcompensate a little bit because of the telescopic lens on the front. So here we are getting to the good stuff. First strike sniping, and this is taken from my first experience of first strike sniping. Again, sorry Lee, taking you out once again. This was probably 50-60 feet away, and you'll see that the Runcam scope cam is doing a wonderful job keeping Lee in focus at that distance. I didn't have to tilt the gun up too high to get this shot, and it's just kept everything nice. This was shot at 1080p at 60 FPS. Again, the same with this next clip. Same settings, same game. A little bit shorter distance, so it's slightly out of focus, but you can see the potential for how sharp the image can get. And that's it. 2 scope cameras, 1 bought, 1 made. Final impressions are I would use this for my TMC every time. I think the distance that this focuses on is far better than this one. Obviously, that's not criticism on this camera because you can get the 25mm lens. If you're only shooting round ball, I would definitely go for the 25mm. For the price, I think I paid £109 for this. For the price, you just can't beat it. You know, the form, you know, it's solid. It just feels so well made, you know. And you know, I just think if you fire first strikes or if you fire paintball sniping, you owe it to yourself to try this camera.